Welcome to another edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly. It's a very wet, cold and dreary Sunday here. The weather in the last week has not been particularly kind. Had a few cold nights down to freezing, which has finished off a lot of the other bedding plants and the half-hardy foliage in the garden. But not to worry, all the plants that are tender, cuttings have been made, or they'll resprout from the ground from rhizomes or bulbs. So, coming up in today's episode, we'll be looking at some special plants, including a very rare Trachycarpus palm. We'll be looking at protecting the aloes and agaves with shelters, and we'll be looking at the tree fern corner and how that's doing. And we'll be having a general look towards what we'll do for the rest of the winter. Now we've had a couple more cold nights in the last week, and it went down to at ground level, down to freezing. My weather station recorded a low of 2 degrees, but I think really, definitely this part of the garden, it went sub-zero at the ground level, probably down to -1. I can't confirm that because I don't have a thermometer at this part of the garden. But anyway, I've started to protect some of the arid plants, including this Aloe polyphilla, mainly because of the cold, but also the damp and the wet. It's been a very dreary week, which is where rot can set in plants. So I have just put this shelter over the top, just a bit of polycarbonate with some stakes in the ground. That'll keep, if I go up directly above the plant, as you can see, none of the plants sticking out the edges there. This will keep the worst of the weather off it. Obviously driving rain and snow can get in at this angle if it comes in at 30-40 degrees. But overall it should keep it quite dry in there, and that is something I'll also do when it gets colder with the agave americana in here and the agave lafantha behind it as well. The agave montanas, this one here and this one, are pretty hard. They don't really need protection, especially in this gravel. But if it gets really cold and snowy, I might put a shelter over these as well. Now this palm tree is pretty special, mainly because it's very rare at any size, and also because the leaves are very interesting. And this is Trachycarpus oreophilus. It's got a slender trunk, really long petioles, and then these wonderful fan-shaped leaves, really slender leaflets here, really large leaves as well. And this isn't altogether fully hardy, so I will be protecting this with fleece around the trunk very soon, and if it gets very cold I'll put fleece all over the top of the plant around the leaves as well. But look at those leaves, aren't they exquisite for a Trachycarpus palm? Slightly glaucous underneath, but mainly very green colour. Nice healthy wide leaves, and like I said, absolutely loads and loads of leaflets. And this is one of the biggest specimens you'll find in the UK. It's standing at about 1.70 m-ish, and these huge big leaves. It's grown very well this year. I think it's done 4.5 big leaves, so it's grown relatively fast, and that trunk is getting bigger every year. Hopefully it'll manage to survive yet another Yorkshire winter. Now you may remember last winter we looked at this bamboo. This is Phyllostacis bambusoides castellonis, and the reason we looked at it was the fact that it was flowering. And what I did in spring was cut down all the flowering culms, and then this summer it's put up not many but 2 or 3 really good culms, including this big one in the middle, and luckily this has not started to flower again on the new culms. However, on the old culms that I cut back, it's done a bit of sprouty regrowth, and that regrowth, as you can see, is flowering once more. So it's still trying to flower, and as we know, it puts a lot of energy into flowering when bamboos flower, and sometimes the bamboos can die. But this, I think, is probably going to set seed. Didn't keep the seed from last year, from the flowers. I did sort of sprinkle about the flower heads, but I've not seen any seedlings come up this summer, so I don't think they were ready. But I will let the few remaining straggly bits down there carry on flowering, and then hopefully none of the new growth will flower like these old straggly bits. The new culms we've had are this one here, which has got no sign of flowering on it at the moment. We've got this one here, and then we've got this big nice culm in the middle which has no flowers on. So hopefully it will stop flowering soon and go back to growing strongly. Actually, the older flowering growth, more of it's there, you can see, shows more variegation on the leaves like that at the back. This bamboo does have variegated culms in some cases, like this one here, and also the leaves as well. So let's monitor that next year. Just thought I'd give an update on this one because a few people have been asking about seeds of this one, and fingers crossed it will remain relatively healthy and grow into a decent clump. As you can see here, the Gunnera tinctoria leaves completely blackened off when they've been exposed to the open skies, and some of the lower leaves are still green. These I will fold over into the crown of the plant just to protect the centre of the plant so it grows well next spring. Back at the end of the garden in the corner, it's still looking very lush. It's protected above by the eucalyptus trees and the laurel and bamboo. It's got its own little microclimate, so that the tree ferns, the Dixonia antarctica, and over in the distance the Ceaphea over there, they're still green and looking pretty happy. So is the Tetrapanax to your left as well, which is still growing. This nice sheltered spot. I'm really pleased with how this is turning out, this corner. And if I come down here, down the path, past all the foliage, you can see the Ceaphea is still fully green, no damage, with new croziers actually slowly emerging, which is fantastic to see. And behind this I've got some hardy parlour palms. I've got the Cavadoria radicalis, which is looking pretty good actually, as well as the cast iron plant underneath it as well. But I have got my rubber tyres on hand to quickly put over the trunk of the Ceaphea should it look like we're going to get cold of like -2, -3, which I'll put over it. And obviously the Fatsias and the bamboos are very hardy and give some structure to the garden at this time of year when a lot of plants are losing the leaves, such as the hawthorn hedge behind. Now, as you can see, the main colourful beds that I created this year look pretty rubbish now that plants have been dug up and the frost and cold have got to all the half-hardy plants. The last remaining plants of the castor oil beans, they've past their best now. We've still got the Trachycarpus palms giving some structure by the fence on the left, and we've also, if you look around to the right, we've got the very interesting looking mule palm, which isn't completely hardy, so we may have to protect that should the weather turn really cold. And the plan over the next few weeks, after I've protected all the plants, which I'll show you what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to put more topsoil and manure onto these beds. And the reason I'm doing that is it's had a season to settle down and the levels have dropped, so I need to put more soil on these areas to really fill them up, ready for planting next year. I'll also be filling in holes further down the garden where I've dug up plants and moved things about and where the soil settled in previous years. So I'll be filling in a hole near the big Jabea bed where the Astelia was earlier in the season, and also down at the end where the Gunnera tinctoria is. I'm going to pack some more soil in there to raise the level a bit, which will help give a bigger, deeper root run for the plants I'm going to plant in there next year. Thank you for watching this edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly. Didn't get that much done in the garden because of the weather. Hopefully I'll get a lot more progress next week, so join me then.